Quilts. I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop, and on today's Classic and Vintage episode, we're going to really recreate an old quilt. We found an antique quilt and it had a circular motion to it, but we wanted to figure out how we could take a vintage pattern and make it fresh for today. We found that the block was called Mayflower, and we traced it back to Nancy Page in 1934, but then we also found that it was also from the 1800s. So with lots of research, this is what we've come up with. We are going to use the brand new Oregon Trail templates, and if you've never used templates before, this is a great quilt to start on because you use the templates and then you trim down. We're going to use Aurifil 2000 since it matches our background. We are going to need a pen to mark the little points in the templates, and you'll need a 4.5 inch or larger square ruler to be able to trim your units down. And we're going to be working a lot with pressing open today. So let's get started on the Mayflower quilt. The Mayflower block pattern is completely free at Fat Quarter Shop. We do have a low price pattern if you want to put it into a setting. But before we start cutting the block, I want to visually show you how the block works. The block has 4 units. The center is using template 1, and then templates 2 and 3 go on the side, and at the very end you add a corner square. So let's get started cutting our block. The Oregon Trail templates are designed by Joanna Figueroa and Miss Rosie, and they have template names on them. So we're going to start with template 1, and we're going to start with our fabric A squares. You'll place the template on your square, and you're going to cut every side. Using a rotating mat will really help because you can see that my fabric is not moving as I'm cutting. Now before you remove the template, what I like to do is mark my dots now. The dots are going to be used as points for pinning in a little bit. You're going to make 4 of these units. The next step is to take a fabric B rectangle, and on your template it will say the template number. Now we're working with template 3, and you want to make sure when you're cutting your template is right side up, and then we're going to just cut right here, rotate, and make sure we do not turn the template to the wrong side or your items will go the wrong way. And I'm just aligning the left side of the template and the bottom side here. And now you have 4 template 3s, and now I'm going to add the dots to these. I'm using a friction pen because the ink will disappear later with heat. If you want to use a pencil, you can do that. Just make sure you're using something very light so it doesn't show through on your final block. We're going to do the same thing with template 2. Make 4 units. Now you're going to stitch on your machine. The most important thing is to stitch with a lower stitch length. So stitch with like a 1.6 stitch length or 1.8, and what you'll do is press open. That's very important to press this open. And then you're going to come back, and you can see that my iron removed the lines from right here, so I'm going to add them back. Just put your template right back on. Add your dots and pin again. And I love working with templates that have the little holes in them where you can create the dots. Then I can do really well with the templates. And then sew again, press open, and your unit looks like this. The last step is on your bigger white corner, not the smaller, we're going to add a fabric D square. We're going to use a corner square method where you draw a line on the wrong side of your fabric D. And again, where there's more white, I'm going to actually pin twice. So before I stitch this line, I see that a little piece is puckering out, and I'm going to cut this back. And only on the top two will I do that. Now I'm going to stitch directly on that line using that same stitch length, really nice and small because you don't want your stitches to come out. And now I'm going to give you some tips on pressing open. Now when I press open, I always set my seam for about 5 seconds. Then I like to press to one side. I usually kind of open the seam with my finger, just press right on that line. Let your iron sit about 5 seconds and just don't move your iron a bunch or your seams will start getting messy. Now from there, once it's pressed to one side, then I like to press open. And I'm gonna probably let the iron sit about 10 seconds. Put a little steam in your unit. Then I'm gonna place the clapper on top and let that sit until all of the heat has absorbed into the wood and you're gonna have nice flat seams. So now we need to trim this to 3 7/8. But first I wanna trim this right here to be straight. So I got a 4.5 inch Creative Grids ruler. I'm gonna place that right on these two sides. I want my 1/4 inch to hit here and my 1/4 inch line on the ruler to hit here. So I'm gonna trim those two, turn it around, and then I need to be at 3 7/8. 3 7/8. Make sure that hits, and 3 7/8, and then trim this off. You're going to do that for all 4 units, and then we'll put our block together. The biggest tip here is to use lots and lots of pins. So from here, put your fabrics right sides together, pin at each end, and then here, where it's pressed open, we want all of this to line up. So we want the blue and the blue and the white to touch. So you'll put a pin here. And on the back, you see this little flipper right here. Cut that off because that's just gonna add bulk. You're gonna do the same thing here. Stitch a 1/4 inch seam. Once those are stitched, you're gonna stitch this at a 1/4 inch seam and you're gonna pin here, here, and here. And you're gonna have a beautiful Mayflower block. You can find the free Mayflower block pattern at fatquartershop.com, and if you want to turn it into an awesome setting that we have, there's a low price pattern for that. This setting block creates a circular motion in the quilt and it makes it look like you have worked with circles and you haven't. And that has size options for toddler, twin, lap, and king. Make sure to subscribe to the Fat Quarter Shop YouTube channel and I'll see you next time.